They always knew how to put on a show. That Sunday afternoon felt like the calm before a storm. The house smelled of lavender air freshener and artificial vanilla from one of Lorraine's discount candles. Everything was staged perfectly, just like her personality. Lorraine greeted me at the door with a sugary smile that never reached her eyes, kissing the air beside my cheek like I was a distant cousin instead of her daughter-in-law of 5 years. Daniel and I had barely crossed the threshold before she shoved a glass of her infamous lemonade into my hand, too sweet, like her tone. "Carol, darling. You look wonderful. A little pale though. Is everything okay? You're not stressed, are you?" She tilted her head, faux concern oozing off her like expired perfume. "I'm good, Lorraine. Life's been busy, but fulfilling," I said, matching her smile, sipping her lemonade without flinching. I had rehearsed for this day more than she could ever imagine. Her eyes narrowed, just a flicker. I saw it. She didn't like it when I didn't flinch. Daniel and I took our usual seats in their over-decorated living room. The couch still had that weird plastic cover she refused to remove. Across from us sat Gerald, leaning forward with his fingers steepled under his chin like he was about to hand down a court ruling. Beside him were 2 of Daniel's aunts, faces pinched with anticipation. Cousin Marie was there too, pretending to be scrolling on her phone while her eyes were glued to us. An audience had been assembled. That should have been my first clue, but I already knew what they were planning. I was just waiting to watch them crash and burn. Daniel had been quiet all morning. I knew he sensed something. My husband was smart, but when it came to his family, he was conditioned to give them the benefit of the doubt. Especially Lorraine. She had her claws in deep from the day he was born. "Well," Gerald began with a sigh, his voice tinged with performative sorrow. "There's something we need to talk about. We didn't want it to come to this, but..." Lorraine stood, as if unveiling the Holy Grail, and turned her phone toward Daniel. "Look at this, sweetheart. We found this a few days ago. We weren't sure what to think. We prayed it was a mistake." On the screen was a photo of grainy, dimly lit, clearly taken from a distance with a phone. It showed me, supposedly, leaning toward a man in a cafe. Our faces close. I recognized the place. But I also recognized the date from the shirt I wore. I hadn't been on a date. I was having lunch with my friend Lucas, who happens to be gay and very married. We were talking about a work presentation, and I leaned in because the cafe was loud. But they didn't care about the context. They had cropped the photo to tell the story they wanted. Daniel stared. I felt his arm tense around my shoulders. His mouth parted slightly, but he didn't speak. Lorraine placed a hand dramatically over her chest. "We didn't want to think badly of you, Carol. But this broke our hearts." I turned to Daniel. He looked at me, half confused, half hurt. I reached over and gently took his hand in mine. "Is that all you have?" I asked, calmly. They blinked. The room froze. "What?" Gerald said. "Is that all?" I repeated, slow and steady. "One photo?" Lorraine's jaw twitched. "Excuse me?" "Because if this is the big reveal you were counting on," I continued, setting down my glass, "I hope everyone brought popcorn. Because I brought something too." I pulled my phone from my bag, casually, like I was checking an email. Calm, composed. The lioness they weren't expecting. I tapped the screen and said, "Hope your Bluetooth still works, Gerald." It took a few seconds, but the screen on their oversized television flickered to life. Gone were the gasps. The smug silence was starting to rot into dread. The footage opened with a sharp image of Lorraine and Gerald sitting at their favorite brunch spot, the Rustic Fork. It was filmed from a diagonal angle, just behind a pillar and a potted plant. The camera was steady. Clear audio, their voices filled the room. "Make sure the lighting is bad," Lorraine said in the video, sipping her tea. "We don't want it to be obvious it's staged. If we get the right angle, it'll look like she's kissing him." Gerald leaned in. "Daniel's been stubborn, but if we make it emotional, tell him how heartbroken we are, he'll believe us. God, I can't wait to get her out of our lives. She walks around like she owns him. Like she's better than us. All that money and independence. Lorraine sneered. She emasculates him, Gerald. He'll never say it, but I know. And when it's done, Gerald added, he'll come back home for a while. We can help him start over. With someone more appropriate. The video kept playing. Lorraine even laughed at one point. She'll never see it coming. I paused the video there, silence, no one moved, not Daniel. Not the aunts. Not Cousin Marie. Lorraine stood frozen, face pale, her hands clenched. Gerald erupted first. You're insane. You recorded us? That's illegal. You edited this. You're trying to frame us. Sit down, Daniel growled. His voice was low and dangerous. Everyone looked at him. Even I froze a little. Because Daniel rarely raised his voice. Especially not at his parents. He turned to me. When was this? 3 weeks ago, I said, calm as ever. I suspected them for a while. Then they started getting careless, asking weird questions about my schedule, showing up unannounced. They even sent a guy pretending to be a plumber. Said Lorraine sent him to check the sink leak. We don't have a leak. Daniel looked back at the TV. Then back at his parents. You set her up? Lorraine shook her head frantically. No, baby, this isn't what you think. She's manipulating you. I heard your voices. I saw your faces. How could you? Daniel's voice cracked. You're my parents. You don't understand. Lorraine snapped. She's changing you. We just wanted to save you from her. Daniel stood up. No. You wanted to control me. And you knew you were losing. His voice dropped lower. You lost. No one said anything. Aunt Gloria slowly got up from the couch and mumbled, I think I should go. Cousin Marie picked up her phone and avoided eye contact as she slipped out the front door. Gerald stood there, red-faced, fists clenched at his side. Lorraine's lip trembled. Daniel, please. We're your family. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her. She is my family now. Daniel's words didn't echo. They detonated. She is my family now. Lorraine stumbled back like she'd been slapped. Her hand clutched her pearls, a family heirloom she wore for theatrics more than tradition. You don't mean that, she whispered, voice cracking. You're just saying that because she manipulated you, Daniel. Look at what she's doing. This is what they do. They? Daniel's eyebrows lifted. They? His voice had dropped again, too calm. That kind of calm that comes after the storm but before the destruction. He looked at her like a stranger. I recognized that expression. Because it's the same one I had when I first saw through them. You're trying to break my marriage with lies and deception, he said, voice steady. And you brought your sisters and cousins to watch it unfold like some sick play. He looked around the living room, half empty now. A couple of Gerald's brothers were already slipping out the back. Whispering hurried goodbyes, like roaches scattering when the lights come on. Everyone who was here, he continued, you were either complicit or willing to believe the worst without asking me or Carol. So let me be clear. Daniel turned, his posture stiff but purposeful. You're all no longer welcome in our lives. Lorraine's knees buckled slightly, and she grabbed the back of the chair. You don't mean that, Daniel. We're your parents. You owe us respect. No, he said. Respect is earned. Not guilt. Gerald stepped in then, finally. You're making a mistake, son. You don't throw away blood over a woman. Daniel's mouth curved, bitterly. She's not just a woman. She's my wife. The woman who stood by me. Who built a life with me. Who warned me that you two were snakes. I just didn't want to believe her. He turned to me then, eyes softening. He reached for my hand and squeezed it, just once. I should have listened to you earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't need an apology. But I accepted it anyway, with a nod. Not for them, for him. I turned back to Lorraine and Gerald, who now looked like two statues cracked from the inside. You wanted me gone so badly. I said softly, but in trying to destroy me, you destroyed your relationship with your son. Lorraine opened her mouth, then closed it again. I continued, I knew you hated me. I knew from the moment I didn't bow to your passive-aggressive comments. From the moment I didn't ask you for recipes or pretend your Sunday dinners weren't bland. I didn't let you control me, and that made me your enemy. Gerald muttered, you always thought you were better than us. No, I said with a small smile. You just always felt small next to me. More people started slipping out quietly. The relatives who were invited as witnesses now wanted no part in the aftermath. Daniel didn't stop them. Neither did I. Let them leave, let them all walk away. They didn't stay silent for long. It started with small things. A text from Lorraine 2 days later, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to protect my son. No apology. No ownership. Just a backhanded justification. I showed it to Daniel. He read it once, then deleted it without a word. Then came the emails. One from Gerald, surprisingly formal. Dear Daniel, I've had time to reflect. Family disagreements are natural, but we shouldn't let them divide us forever. Let's talk like men, like men? As if betrayal could be wrapped in masculinity and passed off as strength. As if scheming against my marriage could be smoothed over with a handshake and a whiskey. Daniel didn't respond. They weren't used to silence. Not from him. And certainly not from me. They thought we'd beg to make things right. That we'd feel guilt. Shame. Pressure. But they miscalculated one thing. We were finally free. 3 weeks passed. Then Lorraine showed up at my office. My assistant looked terrified when she knocked on the glass and whispered, there's a woman in reception. She says she's your mother-in-law? I closed my laptop. Walked out with my spine straight and my expression unreadable. Lorraine stood in a lavender dress. A pearl necklace, of course, and watery eyes that didn't match her usual venom. I didn't smile. Didn't even greet her. What do you want? She exhaled shakily. 5 minutes. Please. I considered it. Just 5 minutes. I had waited 5 years for this. I nodded once. Led her to a side room. Shut the door. She clasped her hands in front of her. I know I hurt you. I didn't think it would go so far. Gerald thought, don't bring Gerald into this, I said, voice like steel. Own your actions. Or leave. She blinked fast. I made a mistake. I was scared of losing Daniel. I thought he was drifting away. You have this. Independence. This control. He started thinking differently. Talking differently. It scared me. Because he grew up, I said. Because he became a man instead of your puppet. She winced. You don't understand how hard it is to let go of a son. And yet, you had no problem trying to rip him away from me. The silence stretched. I just want my family back, she whispered. I looked her in the eyes. For the first time, I saw someone who wasn't a monster. Just a deeply insecure woman. But her insecurities had tried to destroy my life. I want peace, I said. But not a fake one. If you want any relationship with us again, you don't get to pretend this never happened. She nodded quickly. I understand. No, I said. I don't think you do. Because peace means you don't get to rewrite the story. You tell the truth. To your relatives. To Daniel's cousins. To your church group. To everyone you lied to. Her face fell. That's humiliating. So was sitting in your living room while you accused me of cheating, I said. But I survived. Lorraine looked down. I'll think about it, she said quietly. I nodded. You do that. 2 days later, we got a handwritten letter from Gerald. No excuses. Just a plain admission, I believed my wife over you, and I was wrong. I'll live with that. I hope you can forgive me eventually. But if not, I understand. I gave the letter to Daniel. He read it in silence. Then he said, I'm not ready. But I'm glad he finally said it. Slowly, some relatives started reaching out, not to gossip, not to manipulate. Just simple check-ins. A few of them admitted they had believed the worst because it was easier than questioning the family narrative, and while I didn't forget, I started letting go of the bitterness, not for them, but for me, because I deserved peace, too. It was a Sunday afternoon when the knock came, not a message. Not a call, a knock, slow, deliberate, and somehow heavy. Daniel and I exchanged a glance. We weren't expecting anyone when he opened the door. Lorraine and Gerald stood there, no pearl necklace this time. No perfectly pressed shirts. They looked tired. Older. Smaller, somehow. Like they had aged 10 years in 5 weeks. Can we come in? Lorraine asked, voice barely above a whisper. Daniel stepped outside instead, blocking the doorway with his body. We said everything that needed to be said, he said calmly. Please, she said. Just 5 minutes. I was already walking over, standing beside him. I didn't trust them, not their timing, not their intentions, and definitely not their tears. Gerald looked up at us with red eyes. We've been going to therapy, he said, like a confession. Marriage counseling. Family sessions. All of it. They told us to talk to you. Not to fix things, just to own our mistakes. I folded my arms, and Lorraine stepped forward. We hurt you. I hurt you. And I hurt my son. That's not something I can undo. But I'm your mother, Daniel. That doesn't go away. Daniel shook his head slowly. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to love who I loved. But you tried to ruin her, and when that didn't work, you tried to ruin us. That's not love. That's control. Lorraine's eyes brimmed. I didn't know how to let go. That's not my responsibility, Daniel said, his voice finally cracking. I begged you to give her a chance. And what did you do? You fabricated evidence. You embarrassed her. You dragged our marriage through the mud in front of the whole family. And for what? So you could feel superior? Silence. Gerald cleared his throat. We lost our son over pride. Over ego. We don't want to lose our grandchildren too. My stomach clenched. I stepped forward. You don't get to use the idea of grandchildren as leverage. That's manipulation. We're just saying, Lorraine began, but I cut her off. No. You're implying that if we don't forgive you, if we don't let you back in, we're punishing potential kids who don't even exist yet. Do you see how toxic that is? She said nothing. Daniel sighed. We've talked about this. We're willing to have a relationship if there's honesty, accountability, and respect. But this, showing up uninvited, bringing up hypothetical grandkids like bargaining chips, this proves you're not ready. Gerald looked away. Lorraine blinked quickly, like holding back more tears. Daniel's tone softened, just slightly. I love you both. That hasn't changed. But love doesn't mean blind access. You'll always be my parents. But I won't let you near my wife again until you understand what you did. And if we never do? Lorraine whispered. Daniel looked down, then back up. Then that's the boundary. We stood there, 4 feet apart, but it felt like miles. The space between forgiveness and truth. Between guilt and growth. Finally, Lorraine nodded, barely. Okay, she said. We'll go. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded letter, and handed it to me. I wrote everything I never said. Read it, don't read it. That's up to you. I didn't open it. Just tucked it into the drawer later that night and let it sit there, unread. Like a maybe. Like a door left cracked, not open, not closed, just waiting. The days after that final doorstep visit weren't loud. But they weren't calm either. Grief has a way of echoing in the silence, even when you're the one who set the boundary, especially then. I would catch Daniel staring off sometimes, like he was listening to memories no one else could hear. Not longing, just reckoning. Sorting through decades of his parents' smiles, their harsh words, their guilt-tripping hugs, their suffocating expectations, and every so often, I'd get an email from one of the distant relatives who had quietly left that day, the ones who stayed neutral, or spineless, depending on how generous I was feeling. Their messages came laced with phrases like, "Family is complicated. They made a mistake, but they're still your blood. Forgiveness is a virtue." Funny how forgiveness becomes everyone else's favorite word when you're the one who was wronged, but I didn't argue. I didn't justify. I just didn't reply, because peace, I learned, is a decision you make every day. And that decision often sounds like silence. It's the silence of not replying to bait, the silence of not explaining your side to people who never cared to ask, the silence of a home free of tension, tight-lipped dinners, fake smiles, and strategic seating plans. One night, Daniel and I were cooking together, something we hadn't done in months. I was chopping onions while he stirred sauce. It smelled like basil and garlic and something new. It smelled like healing. He looked at me and said, "I used to think peace was making everyone happy." I paused. And now? Now I know peace is choosing the right people to be happy with. That night, we talked about everything. Not just his parents. But the future. Kids. Our home. What holidays would look like now without forced visits and icy fake cheer. It was the first time we planned for joy instead of avoiding drama, and slowly, the world opened back up. Friends we hadn't seen in a while started showing up again. Not because we hid, but because we'd been so consumed by family theatrics that we forgot how to live for us. We went on a trip. Just the two of us. No phone calls. No check-ins, just laughter. Photos. A little too much wine. When we returned, I pulled Lorraine's letter from the drawer. I read it. It was long. Rambling. Emotional. Some of it sounded like remorse. Some of it still felt like manipulation in prettier wrapping. But what stuck with me was this line near the end, "You were never the villain." I just didn't want to believe I wasn't the hero. And there it was, their truth. Finally, not enough for reconnection, but enough for closure. 1 month later, we threw a dinner party. Just us, and the people who had stayed when the drama hit hardest. Friends. A few cousins. My sister. People who had never asked me to be smaller just to make someone else comfortable. People who never asked for proof of my innocence because they never doubted it to begin with. Daniel raised a glass that night. "To new traditions," he said. "To boundaries," I added. And we laughed, and when the clinking stopped, when the room settled into warm conversation and slow music, I looked around and realized, peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of people who don't make you question your worth, and I had finally found mine.